El séptimo Campus Ultzama de la Fundación Arquitectura y Sociedad este año ha tenido como título, como lema, Construir lo construido, Will the Will. Se trata, en definitiva, de reflexionar intensamente sobre la necesidad de pensar en el modo de aprovechar el patrimonio ya construido a lo largo de tantos siglos de arquitectura. De alguna manera, sin exageraciones, podemos pensar que, por lo menos en el mundo occidental, todo lo que necesita la sociedad lo tenemos construido. Quizá hay tres como aspectos más importantes para discutir a lo largo de estos días. Uno, referido al patrimonio, realmente lo que habitualmente se considera el patrimonio arquitectónico, lo de los siglos pretéritos. El segundo campo sería el de la arquitectura contemporánea. En el siglo XX se ha construido muchísimo, a veces no bien, a veces con defectos. Ahora tenemos capacidad técnica para modificar lo que se hizo y reemplear todo ese patrimonio entendido como riqueza, no como algo a conservar, sino como una riqueza que tenemos y que podemos reemplear. Y el tercer campo sería el del paisaje, el territorio. Estos días en el campus vamos a discutir qué debemos hacer para reutilizar lo ya construido, construyéndolo de nuevo como si fuera un solar nuevo. En vez de un solar donde no hay nada, antes quizá trigo, y de repente construimos un edificio, ahora hay un edificio, y es nuestro solar, a partir del cual tenemos que reinventar una nueva arquitectura para el servicio de la sociedad. Para eso nos vamos a reunir estos días y esperamos conseguir unos resultados que sean útiles para la sociedad y, por tanto, para que la Fundación Arquitectura y Sociedad cumpla su misión.
Construir lo construido no es ninguna novedad, es algo que se viene haciendo de toda la vida. Lo que ocurre es que quizá ahora se dan unas circunstancias en las que es más necesario que antes. Entonces lo que hay que intentar es desarrollar quizá algún tipo de experiencia y de conocimiento en el sentido de que cada vez en la que vamos a intervenir sobre lo que está construido intentemos seguir unos criterios óptimos y que de alguna manera sean deudores de todo lo que ya se ha hecho y se ha hecho bien.
I think that a very interesting point of view to the theme of building within the build is to think also the architectures that we do at the moment, the new buildings that we build at the moment, how would they be rebuilt or built on top of these architectures? So I think that that's also a very important responsibility that we should recognize in our profession.
On the other hand, it's been really interesting, the debate in these 3 days, and especially on thinking in two different levels. In the local scale, no, thinking when we have to act or to do something in an existing building, but as well what came now in the third day of discussion about the global intervention and thinking of how much we have been building in the last 50, 60, 70 years, and thinking that if we go on building with this speed, well, we have the resources that we have, the earth is limited, and we can't do that. So actually the future has to go for sure on reconstruction, on rebuilding, but that doesn't mean, of course, that we only have to do that.
What I may think is the issue here is to start being more sensitive to the needs that we actually need in the transformations of the places. So by then we probably will invest more on building the build, because we understand that still with smaller investments we can change and readapt and bring back to a kind of a different use which is more needed, as well as to do new projects, new constructions, new interventions with the proper scale, with the proper program that is needed. So what I think this crisis came to show us is that we start thinking twice before we start building, before we start projecting, and this is is the best part of the issue.
Recycling the structures of the space and the old buildings probably is the base, but also the city is made by many different components, very different between them. So the problem is to find a strategy to transform the existing cities. Of course, this strategy cannot be one. We must understand the context first and then use the right solution that can be chosen every time, different.
Reuse is interesting in the sense that we can act as producers of meaning in the long history of one building. The buildings have a life. Sometimes they have a long life before us and after us. So my personal approach to the idea of reuse is this possibility of meaning. Sometimes we can act with power or strength because what we found is a fragile building with, well, let's say, less interest in terms of the discipline, but sometimes we really have to act with fragile strategy because what we found it's a meaningful building. I like this complexity. So reuse for me, it's always about making architecture.
There are really many reasons why I think that this theme is important, and we should. And it's not something. I mean, to me, I have mentioned before that Leon Battista Alberti, the Renaissance architect, has been so important. And he wrote in his treatise on the 10 books on the art of building about decorum, and I think decorum is how to be appropriate in a certain surrounding, and being appropriate is usually being very aware of what is there, what is built, and how it can be adapted to. And as you know, he also wrote in this book, he said that the highest virtue of an architect is to know what is appropriate. And usually being appropriate is not tearing something down and building something new with lacking qualities, but rather sort of being very careful about how the interventions are. Sometimes they could be new and there could be some audacity in them, but primarily they must be carefully thought out.
No creo que haya sido por la crisis la consideración quizá especial de la persistencia en estos últimos años. Creo que ha sido un fenómeno que se ha desarrollado a lo largo de la historia, y creo que nuestra obligación como arquitectos es operar en espacios que tienen una significación simbólica y convertirlos en sitios de una significación simbólica de una nueva cultura. El papel trascendental del arquitecto es influir, o sea, intentar influir de manera que seamos nosotros los que tomemos decisiones sobre el patrimonio. Lo que debemos evitar en todo caso es que estas decisiones se tomen en consideración tan solo valores socioeconómicos.
I think that the topic of this Congress is not by accident. Somehow we are here because of we are in a period after a process of excess in architecture, and I think that this shouldn't be something that is a result of an excess. So I think here we are claiming for a sort of the conclusion, or the main conclusion of this Congress is like the claim for a more permanent and careful approach to the city.
Penso que apesar da crise devemos fazer o que fazíamos anteriormente, mas melhor, com mais tempo, mais atentos, com mais humildade, com a capacidade de tentar ver as coisas de uma forma mais profunda, em que mais gente participe, não é? Em que a comunicação com as pessoas é muito importante, não é? E transformar isso também numa força do projeto. Não é?
creo que lo más importante es seguir pensando en el rol social que debe tener la arquitectura, y para ello es importante que el arquitecto se involucre en esferas de discusión y en esferas de reflexión a nivel urbano, a nivel social, y que de alguna manera no esté solamente pensando en los problemas particulares de su oficina, sino que pueda extender la mirada y reflexionar sobre la ciudad y sobre su rol social dentro de la ciudad.
I think it's really important to recognize the spatial qualities of existing structures, especially in the city, because I think like a real lively urban fabric consists of these different spaces, these different layers, and this kind of transformation you only get if you deal with the existing. So that's what I would like to have, like an urban fabric, which consists of probably very robust topologies, which can be adapted to new uses, new programs, and new requirements every, I think, different generation.
Construir sobre lo construido es construir nuevos espacios o es construir nuevos lugares. La sociedad está pidiendo una nueva manera de interpretar esos elementos ya construidos. Tiene más interés el entender la arquitectura como la construcción de lugares más que la construcción de espacios, en el sentido de que permite tener una relación mucho más directa con los individuos. Hasta ahora la arquitectura ponía el foco de atención en el objeto, en la construcción del espacio, y no en la relación con los individuos.
I can talk about the recuperation of buildings, the recuperation of certain types of buildings or certain criteria of recuperation in my dear city, but in very specific situations. If we revive a cadaver or we recuperate a cadaver in a pertinent way, the cadaver has to be worthwhile, and it has to be worthwhile. I don't think it's just a question of spatial qualities. I don't think it's just a question of its potential, its spatial potential. I think a lot of it has to do with what it represents politically, what its recuperation represents, what its violation represents, its perversion represents, and this is where it becomes interesting or it's not interesting.
I think it's an interesting ambition to recycle the city to make a new city, but frankly, it's unrealistic. I think lots of the materials that were used in previous construction cannot be recycled easily, but lots of buildings can be stripped back so that they can be added to or changed in a creative way. And I think that it's architects are very well placed to understand the role of good imagination and good design in bringing that flair and interesting aspects to reusing existing buildings in a new way.
They were not about edification, it's more about modification. Yeah. Probably most buildings were over-dimensioned because we thought the structure would be too fragile. So with this over-dimensioning of structures, we can today densify, probably, build on or add or transform skeletons to make them somehow reusable. And so I do think the city will also grow on itself.
Se nos pregunta acerca de si la arquitectura de alguna manera tiene que dejar el protagonismo de lo nuevo para reutilizar lo ya existente. Y yo creo que son dos cosas que no son incompatibles. Se puede tener el protagonismo de una cosa nueva que se crea a partir de algo existente, ¿no? Y también se habla de si podemos hablar del reciclaje en términos de arquitectura. Yo creo que eso es muy interesante, pero siempre pensando que, igual que en el reciclaje de elementos que ya no son útiles para el uso que tenían, se generan cosas que son totalmente nuevas. Y yo creo que la arquitectura no debe renunciar a esa dimensión de generar algo nuevo, aunque sea reutilizando materiales ya existentes.
In Greek festivals, sometimes we run out of tables. So this very long, typical festival table runs out of length. The solution that people give is that they unscrew doors and windows and turn them into tables. And for me, that's the perfect example of what architecture really does. It creates potential that solves a problem that was there yesterday, and because architecture is very late, and because the problems that you can solve are already solved by themselves, architecture has to look forward. And the more conscious we are and the more smart we are about this recycling, the more relevant architecture will become.
Construir sobre lo construido tiene todo el sentido del mundo, es una cosa que se lleva haciendo desde el inicio de los tiempos, ¿no? Las ciudades en el fondo se establecen como pequeñas establishments y poco a poco se van desarrollando y se convierten en ciudades. El papel que tenemos que asumir nosotros, yo creo como arquitectos, es un papel más humanitario, de unificar las cosas y tener la capacidad de decir que sí, que no, o sea, tomar ese papel dentro de la sociedad, de valorar lo que está bien para mantener y lo que está mal y demoler.
Siempre la arquitectura ha trabajado con la idea de realidad, es algo que le es propio, ¿no? Luego, en un contexto socioeconómico como el actual, quizás lo que significa para un arquitecto es trabajar con un contexto ya muy construido, ¿no? Yo creo que en ese sentido es interesante reivindicar la figura de un arquitecto que maniobra, un arquitecto que repara, ¿no? De manera dinámica y que lo hace de manera consciente, ¿no? Trabajar con lo existente en ese sentido significa no renunciar a construir algo nuevo con lo que existe, ¿no? Y hacerlo, crear lugares que sean significativos, ¿no? Yo creo que esta es una de las cosas que, ¿no? Reivindicar esta figura, un arquitecto maniobrero reparador.
En la historia la construcción siempre ha vuelto a recuperar algo que existía como algo que se podía utilizar para una nueva construcción. Con este encuentro hemos visto bastantes ejemplos de posibilidades de recuperar y de volver a proyectar y a construir utilizando lo que existe y volviendo prácticamente a dar nueva vida a construcciones que se han perdido.
A mi modo de ver, al momento en el que se impacta un entorno construido ya preexistente, se debe entender que nos enfrentamos también a un montón de consecuencias de índole social y cultural. O sea, finalmente estamos impactando en un lugar donde ya hay habitantes y que pueden sentirse pasados a llevar, un poco porque uno está impactando ese edificio que significa una carga simbólica para ellos, y por otro lado también puede significar esta reconstrucción, una revalorización de este sector y por ende la consecuencia de que los habitantes sean expulsados, una especie de gentrificación. Creo yo entonces que lo más importante justamente es considerar todo el impacto que se hace, no solamente a nivel de ámbito construido, sino de todo el ámbito social y de las redes sociales que existen en ese lugar. Creo que eso es lo primordial al momento de cuestionarse construir en lo construido. ¿Qué redes sociales y culturales también hay dentro de esa reconstrucción?
I suppose the question is not so much whether we should be preserving or building new, but perhaps maybe as architects our responsibility is to build in our time and to add another layer to the city so that one can imagine what might come rather than always looking to the past. So I would argue it's better to intervene in such a way that one imagines the future as another layer, as a palimpsest to the city or to the building, rather than arguing for preservation or for doing something new.
There's a lot of opportunity for innovation within working inside the existing fabric. So innovation is not only related to the making of new forms, it's also related to thinking about reusing existing fabric. That's, I think, a very important contribution we as architects can make. The adaptation of existing building, the maintenance of existing buildings is the kind of common daily work that architects do in Germany. I would say that typically a German office would do between 60 to 80% of its total commissions within existing building fabric. And I think that is quite normal for most of Europe, and it will be very normal for, I think, all of the world in the next 20 to 30 years.
We should never abandon the protagonism of
well, of renewal or of perhaps evolution. Maybe would it be even better? In other words, that we should never stop trying to make things somehow better. And should we not be talking about the importance of recycling the city? I mean, I think that's definitely an issue. But the thing is, recycling, whether it's an issue of, it's always an issue of degree, of scale. We talk about entire neighborhoods, buildings, shells, skeletons, materials. Maybe some buildings should be, I think, pulverized into rubble, and then we can use that. Or maybe it's just the pipes and the wires that we save. I think that perhaps there's a whole series of different scales of intervention. And when it comes to recycling, I would argue something that's a little bit closer to something like bricolage, maybe in the sort of Levi-Strauss sense of bricolage, where you take entire pieces and fragments, like buildings, maybe sometimes entire buildings or huge sections of buildings, and essentially put them together into completely different organizations. The way Picasso did. He did it with a basketball and a toy car, and he made a baboon, right? And the thing is that whenever you see Picasso's baboon, you see a baboon, but you're also seeing the basketball, and you're also seeing the toy car. In other words, what happens is that on the one hand, it reverts to the kinds of things, the pieces maintain a certain identity, basketball, car. On the other hand, there's a brand new identity that almost consumes the previous ones. And I think that that's probably what we should do when we talk about recycling. In other words, doing something where we're moving into a different direction, but at the same time, I guess, allowing the original pieces to somehow maintain a degree of their identity. Maybe that's the way that one should be perhaps going about building the built in this end. So, right. Let's just say that.